Well, Michael Deeley came into my life in just before we started shooting Convoy. Michael Deeley bought the rights to the song Convoy and hired Sam Peckinpah at a time when he was not very hireable. He also, interestingly enough, had hired Michael Cimino to direct The Deer Hunter. This is when he was at EMI. And one day he invited Sam and myself and Michael Cimino to Malibu on the beach to commemorate or commit the hiring of the two of them. And I met Cimino and Michael Deeley at the same time, which is interesting in itself because Michael Cimino was a huge fan of Sam's and invited Sam to come onto Heaven's Gate, and that's a whole other story. Sam was not the easiest person to produce with, and his life was veering off in a very different direction. And it's with the time when my relationship with Sam ended. I was fired from Convoy, and it was the last time that I ever worked with him again. Because I was fired, Michael Deeley felt that I could be an attribute to EMI and to him, and he hired me. And so I said that would not be a good idea for me to be working for you, Michael, while you're still working with Sam. So I was sent to England to work at EMI for a few months until Convoy was ended. I then came back, and Michael Deeley put me on The Deer Hunter with Michael Cimino. So my career with him continued for quite a while. But his relationship with Sam was far from an easy task. I'm surprised that Convoy was completed, but thanks to the editors, it became a film that was distributable, but but it was not an easy time for anybody.
Michael, on Convoy, you were not the notional producer, but you became that. Could you describe your function on the film and what it became?
It started, I was the president of a company, an English company operating in America, and a producer brought Convoy to us. It was a project which had been turned down by other studios, didn't have a director, didn't have a cast, but had a very sort of lively feeling to it. And we put together the various ingredients, actors, found the director, Sam, and that should have been the end of my work, except, in a sense, the office element of supervising the results, looking at the rushes and so on. But unfortunately, the picture quickly, as was not unusual with Sam Peckinpah, went out of control, and it was necessary for somebody with the authority of the company to move in and, I suppose you might say, take control of the set as well as take control of the picture.
And that's what you did?
That's what I did.
Going back to this concept story and of hiring Sam, what influenced those decisions?
Hiring Sam had an exceptional eye. He had an exceptional record of success in pictures outside America in the international market. And our method of operating at the time was that we would find a project which would do well in America, which we could sell to a major distributor, United Artists, Paramount, Universal, whoever. And having sold that for a large percentage of the cost, we would then make sure that without corrupting their needs, we would pack it with those elements which would be very attractive foreign. And Sam's history of pictures was such that he was held in greater respect, certainly much greater respect by then, outside America than in America. Certainly outside America than in Hollywood. So he was a good sales peg to hang the picture on, apart from his ability.
What was Sam's reputation standing at the time that he was hired for Convoy?
As I would say that he was a man who couldn't easily be employed at the time. He'd had a lot of quarrels with people. He'd been behaved very exotically on pictures and off pictures. He picked fights. People thought he was a drunk. I think that it was a rare producer that wanted to take on Sam Peckinpah. In fact, to be fair, the producer who originally brought the project to us didn't want Sam Peckinpah because he knew that it would make his life very difficult indeed. But my job was to make sure we had a picture which had some flair and had some sales aspects to it, and that's why we had him.
Can you tell me how the problems manifested themselves in some detail and how you coped with that?
The problems have such a range, but the first thing that really happened was it became perfectly plain to us that Sam Peckinpah wanted to direct a picture, but didn't necessarily want to direct the picture that he'd contracted to direct. He felt it was a truck movie, which incidentally is what it was a truck movie. But he wanted to invest it with some social significance, some importance, some political stuff, and that wasn't possible with this project. It was a truck movie. And that was the first thing, when it became plain that he wanted to do that. The second thing was that I realized fairly early on that he was terrified of what he was doing, that he was afraid of any picture he made being compared to his reputation for the great pictures he had made. I can understand that, but it was almost stopping him from functioning in a way. The third thing was that he always had to have, it seems, from other people I've talked to, somebody on the picture, or some bodies on the picture, who he could hate. And naturally they were most conveniently authority figures. So the first real trouble we had after the shooting started was when he made it impossible for the producer, who was meant to be in charge of the whole enterprise, financially, creatively, all of those things, made it impossible for him to be on the set. If he came on the set, Sam would retire his caravan to, quote, think about the next shot, and wouldn't come out until the producer left, which is a very tough thing to do. It's particularly tough because there's always somebody behind the producer, the money people, in this case represented by me, who are not very sympathetic as they should be to producers who are being bullied by directors. They tend to look to the director because he's, after all, the functionary at that point. So it was getting very sort of combative and messy, and it became plain when Bob Sherman, who was an extremely nice man, was being treated as though he wasn't a very nice man by Sam, and by Sam's little coterie of pals who he had around him. Became plain the picture would not proceed in the form in which we wanted it to proceed, as long as Bob was unsupported by somebody else on the set. And that's why I went down to New Mexico.
Can you describe the nature of your discussions with Peckinpah to try and put it back on track?
You don't put Sam, or I should say you didn't put Sam Peckinpah back on track with discussion, because Sam is very good at discussion. He was very agreeable, he was extremely nice in discussion, just as he is very nice pre-production. He would tell you what he believed you wanted to hear. Sam had had a lot of practice at this stuff. He knew about the divisive relationships between producers, studios, and so on. And Sam was also a master con man. I mean, he knew how to schmooze somebody if he felt like doing it that way. If he didn't feel like doing it that way, then he would perhaps rely on a temper tantrum. But initially, it was all going to be wonderful, and now we'd effectively replaced Bob's authority with mine, although of course Bob obviously remained. We'd get on very well. But that was just roughly what he said to Bob Sherman in the first place as well.
So in practical terms, how did you deal with it?
In practical terms, I must be honest that I had written into the enterprise a margin of about 20%, which is more than twice what you normally allow, of hidden time and money. I felt that we were bound to have some elements of chaos in the picture, and the best thing to do was just to push it as hard as we could every day, rely upon some form of reason, get a little bit shot, a little more shot, knowing that we had the margin behind us, until the margin began to run out, and then of course things would have to get tougher. But as it was, we went on and we shot, and Sam was given some little, indulgences. But of course one indulgence begs two. And it was really just a question of trying to play every day and keep the thing on track. Sam didn't want to be fired from the picture. And more significantly, I didn't want him to be fired from the picture. It would have been much easier to fire him, but I wanted what he does, which is produce some very interesting shots. I wanted him to have directed the picture. In a sense, his ultimate threat would say, I quit. But Sam wanted the money. A, and B, his second threat was, I do not want my name on the picture. But in the contract which we'd drawn with him, he did not have the right, provided he shot at least 50% of the picture, to remove his name. And I wanted his name on it, I wanted his services on as well.
Did you have an opinion about if he was driven by some inner demon, what that was, and whether it had got out of control at that point?
Which inner demon drove Sam, I cannot tell you. I think there must have been a lot of them, and I think the problem was they were probably fighting it out inside him. Whatever those demons were, they manifested themselves in a certain amount of drinking and various other dependencies, I suppose. I think the demons were fighting amongst themselves, and that was the trouble. He was a battlefield. He was like a boxing ring. It was all smash and grab and thunder going on inside him, and it left him, I think, very little energy left to do much else. That was the most sad thing, was that you could see him drained by his own conflicts, physically drained. He got very tired, and he got very old, well before he should have done.
What were his strengths as a director in your opinion?
His strengths was that he was daring. He had a very good eye. He had a look which he could assemble. He made a picture look striking. It may be that in the process the script, or at the beginning the script wasn't good, or the script got messed around, which is one of the things that happens to a lot of pictures, but happened to a lot of Sam's. So the narrative got damaged, but it still looked terrific. And if you had enough of that material, you could cut it, or it could be cut into strong energy. So there'd be strong energy scenes, often interspersed with dreary scenes, but the scenes people remember are the energy scenes. He could get energy on the screen. It was an expensive process because he shot 7 cameras most of the time, but he could get energy and spectacle and good-looking stuff. He lensed very well.